Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats as the program will begin in 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the program is about to begin.
It's been a long time coming since I seen your face. I've been everywhere and back, trying to replace everything that I had till my feet went numb. Praying like a fool, it's been on the run. Heart's still beating, but it's not working. It's like $1 million phone that you just can't ring. I reached out trying to love, but I feel nothing. Yeah, my heart is numb. But with you, I feel again. Yeah, with you, I can feel again. Yeah.
For the first time in almost 2 years, the business travel industry will come together to learn, connect, and to inspire.
I'm looking forward to networking with people from all over the world, all the different cultures, so that we can learn and share together.
Learning and evolving towards what will be critical for our industry in the future.
Our industry is built on relationships. I'm thrilled to be attending the GBTA convention in person.
In person.
In person.
In person.
In person. Over a cocktail, over some great presentation.
What I'm most looking forward to at convention is to connect again.
Reconnect.
Real life connections.
I cannot wait to meet my colleagues and make those new connections face to face.
Business needs travel, and so do I.
GBTA Convention 2021. It was a long road. Let's get back to travel. Let's get back to business. We are so glad you're here.
Please welcome to the stage Grant Kaplan, GBTA DEI Committee Chairperson, and Charlene Ketwaru Nanu, GBTA Direct Seat for Regional Canada Board Director.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be joining you here today in my first term as Director at Large Canada for GBTA's Board of Directors. I even brought my own chairing section.
And I'm proud to be representing you in serving the new GBTA Global DEI Committee. Charlene was in our first group of Global Vice Chairs for the committee, and we're very proud that she agreed to serve on the board.
Now, GBTA recognizes the diversity in our membership and in our industry as a core strength. But we know that there is so much more work that we need to do. The first step in striving towards a more equitable and inclusive association for all of our members was taken earlier this year with the formation of GBTA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This group of phenomenal volunteers bring diverse geographical, personal backgrounds to GBTA's first globally curated committee. Members' track records of inclusion advocacy, DE&I certifications and past experiences position this committee well as we move forward to create resources and education for all of you to take back to your programs, your client conversations, and your company's DE&I efforts.
Our 6 subcommittees are producing white papers presenting to BTA chapters and outside organizations, helping others understand the pursuit of supplier diversity, formulating the voice of GBTA's DEI effort along with WINIT. Just generally working with GBTA to be the voice of inclusion in travel and encouraging a more sympathetic and empathetic existence for all of us. You can see that we have taken it beyond just talking, because what really counts is actually doing. We are developing a survey to help better understand what diversity information that you and other GBTA members would like to focus on. Let's celebrate who you are, each in our own way.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Mick Lee, WINIT by GBTA Chair and GBTA Board Director.
I stand before you on behalf of my partners, Dorothy Dowling and Beth Knirk, the wonderful Lisa Sensulo from GBTA, and the amazing Strategic Advisory Board for WINIT and group of volunteers. The Strategic Advisory Board is a collection of women and men who are game changers and leaders in their space. Among their ranks are WINIT Outstanding Women of the Year, BTN Best Practitioners, Allied Members of the Year, ARC President recipients, Most Influential Executives in Business Travel, Carlson CEO Award winners, Top Women in Travel, Top Travel Managers of the Year, and BTN Hall of Famers. We would like to extend a special thanks to Melissa Mayer and Tracy Mercer for their years of service with us. WINIT is focused on achieving equality, and that all starts with awareness. We are 18 months into the pandemic, and women in the corporate arena are even more burned out than they were last year. Despite this, women leaders are stepping up to support women and men employee well-being and diversity efforts, but that is often not being recognized. Women did make gains in representation in 2020, but burnout is still on the rise. Only 1 in 4 executive leaders are female. Only 12% of P&L-focused roles are filled by women, and fewer than 6% of companies are led by a female CEO. On the surface, the travel and tourism industry is leading the way when it comes to gender diversity, with women representing over 50% of employees. But hidden in plain sight is a different story. Female representation falls to 40% at mid-level management and 33% at the senior executive level, above which there is still a very dense glass ceiling at the senior management levels and the C-suite. All of this despite a growing body of research proving that fostering diversity at all levels is not only the right thing to do, it is good for business. Consumers are increasingly making choices on where to stay and who to fly based on company records for diversity. Employees want to work for an organization that is visionary and inclusive. And investors realize that to achieve full revenue potential, a company needs to employ a team that is representative of its consumer base. Now, some women at the top are putting noticeable cracks in the glass ceiling, but there aren't enough female colleagues coming up behind them. Now, the good news is that the push to disclose diversity data is going to gain momentum post-pandemic, and companies who do their part to move the needle and to course correct will win in the long run, and WINIT will help us get there. We share all of this with you today, not to be negative, but to be transparent. We know what we need to do, and only through awareness of where we are will we be able to get to where we need to be. Now, not everyone wants to be a CEO, not everyone wants to be a manager, and WINIT is not about seniority or Win It is not about a title. In fact, our motto has always been to leave your business card at the door. We are all equals in this space. Our job at Win It is to ensure that nothing and no one stops you from becoming your best self, your definition of your best self. In 2022, we are launching Win It Reimagined, based on 3 fundamental components that we believe are critical to our success. Inspire. Since 2014, Win It has served to help women understand the power we already have. Ignite. Raising awareness to help everyone understand the role we all play in gender equality. Invest. This is not a short-term problem with a quick fix, but a business-critical imperative that requires investment of our time, our funding, and our attention. I welcome you to Win It 2022, with 5 key pillars of programming, each led by a member of the board that we named Glassbreaker, which we think is a title that is appropriately aligned with our mission. We are thrilled with the relaunch of the most successful program Win It first implemented by GBTA's Dawn Murphy in 2014, the Win It One-on-One Mentor Program. This pillar will be led by Glassbreaker Mary Ellen Hess, Program Manager Jane Pearsall, and a team of subcommittee members focused on creating an automated one-on-one mentoring relationship designed to complement the highly successful GBTA Ladders program and create a one-on-one mentoring program overall. This virtual program will be based on a self-selection process where mentees specifically pick a mentor that has the experience that they are seeking. Male allyship and support, led by Glassbreaker Laura Smith and Program Manager Gary Murakami, focused on the creation of a network of women and men to help men effectively become allies for equality, sharing opportunities, publicly celebrating accomplishments, and supporting visibility of women. Win It Education, led by Crystal Johnson and Holly McTeague, focused on how we will inspire, invest, and ignite our membership with targeted classes, webinars, and articles. Navigating the return to the office and the return to the road. This is something on all of our minds for 2022, and this will be led by Patty Huska and Kristen Ahi, focused on defining what this means to women in the workplace. And finally, community collections. This is something that I will be leading with Christina Bay, Carrie Biggett, Holly Warner, Mike Daly, and Jamie Porkalob to galvanize our membership and create structured networking opportunities. The Win It Summit 2022, in-person Win It Gala to celebrate the women and men in our industry making a difference for equality. Nonprofits from around the world, like Win It, were essentially on pause for the last 18 months, and we think it's time to hit fast forward. If you've been involved in Win It in the past, please come back. If you hear something that is of interest, join us. If you think we need to do more, tell us where we're missing the mark. Whatever your gender and identity, and whatever your choice of pronouns, you are welcome here. Watch for a survey next week to ensure we know exactly what is on your mind. And now, one way to inspire your own reset is Tiffany Dufu. Tiffany has been featured in the New York Times, Oprah Magazine, and on MSNBC. She was named Women Who Are Leading the Way in the Huffington Post among luminaries such as Hillary Clinton and Diane Sawyer. She is a consultant to Fortune 500 companies. She's an accomplished author, and her book, Drop the Ball, is all about achieving more by doing less. Tiffany and I first met and worked on women leadership projects together almost a decade ago, and I learn from her every time we speak. She is that person who ignites something within you and inspires you to be a better person. Thanks to Airbnb, we're able to bring Tiffany to all of you today. I believe that we can all make the glass ceiling disappear when women help other women break through it. That we should raise our daughters to worry less about fitting into glass slippers and instead focus on shattering glass ceilings. And we should raise our sons to know that they have a responsibility to the women and girls in their lives. And so, on behalf of Dorothy, Beth, and me, here is to shattering the glass and dropping the balls. Everyone, I'm pleased to bring you Tiffany.
Thank you, Mick, for allowing me to be a part of this Win It DEI Day. When you and I met for the first time nearly a decade ago, we were both aligned around our commitment to the progression and the advancement of women. And I'm so appreciative to be able to be a part of this GBTA convention. Thank you to our sponsor, Airbnb. I am an Airbnb member, a pretty proud one. And while my schedule precluded me from being able to be with you all in person, I am completely aligned with the theme of ready, safe travel. I have personally been on the road and have felt safe out there. So thanks to all of you. I wrote a book called Drop the Ball because I used to be a person who was terrified of ever dropping a ball. What happened when I had my, what I call drop the ball moment, is that I realized Armageddon never hit. No one ever called to tell me that they didn't love me anymore because I didn't attend the event. No one ever fired me from my job. The police didn't come and read me my Miranda rights because I hadn't paid those tickets for not moving my car for alternate side parking in New York City. And so I had a reckoning, this time in my life where I decided I would start questioning, why is it that we feel so much pressure to keep so many balls in the air to begin with? And I decided to reappropriate the term. So for me now, and I hope that you will adopt this term, dropping the ball means that I've released these unrealistic expectations that I'm supposed to do it all and to do it all perfectly to begin with. And there's a 3-step framework that's a part of my philosophy that I encourage all of us to adopt. The first part of the framework is getting really clear about what matters most to you, separate and apart from what matters to advertisers, your family, your friends, your in-laws. Step number 2 is really getting clear about what is your highest and best use, to realize what matters most to you so that you're not just saying yes to everything that comes over the fence and feeling even more overwhelmed. Step number 3 is all about meaningfully engaging other people, yes, even your boss, in helping you to figure out how you're going to drop some balls, how you're going to reprioritize, and quite frankly, how you're just going to figure out how to create a life that you are passionate about. I am really excited to be answering a few questions related to drop the ball. And here, let's get started.
Hi, Carrie Biggett with Altour. It's bright and early in the morning, and I'm checking some things off my to-do list before the day officially starts. And I love this idea about dropping the ball in order to succeed. My question is, how do I identify and address those fears I have with possibly not meeting folks' expectation of me because I dropped that ball? Thank you.
It's an important question, Carrie, because I can tell you from personal experience that dropping the ball without letting other people in your life know that you're dropping the ball is not a recipe for success. And so meaningfully engaging other people in your journey of really getting clear about what matters most to you, what your purpose is, but then secondarily, what your highest and best use is in achieving what matters most so that they know what you're focused on and you can meet those expectations is really important. Our highest and best use is basically a combination of what we do really well with very little effort, not because we are a prodigy, but usually because we've done it over and over and over again, combined with what are the things that only you can do, Carrie, that would be callous or irresponsible to delegate to another person. That's what represents your highest and best use. And once you're clear about what matters most to you, really figuring out what are the top 3 things that I need to be focused on, that are going to get me what matters most to me, that are going to help me move from point A to point B is absolutely essential. It's also essential that you crowdsource what's on your new to-do list with other people so that they're not surprised and so that your expectations are aligned. And our professional lives, especially when it comes to managing up, the conversations are a little bit different. They sound something like, and make sure that you schedule time for these conversations. Hey, Bob, I know that we need to hit our Q4 deliverable out of the ballpark. I'm really aligned with us hitting our objectives. And one of the observations I've made is that I do really well helping us with our sales targets when I'm interfacing directly with the client. The more time that I spend face-to-face with the client or virtual to virtual with the client, the more I'm successful. One of the observations that I've also made is that I tend to be spending a lot of my time lately on X, Y, or Z, our CRM. And I'm just wondering if you might be open to a conversation about how I might reprioritize my time in order to ensure that we hit Q4 out of the ballpark. I assure you that Bob will be open to this conversation. I also assure you that checking in with people in your life about what their expectations are and about what the top 3 things are that they feel you should be focused on in order to be a good manager, a good mom, a good partner, a good husband, a good sister, whatever it is, will allow you to lower your expectations of yourself, because normally our expectations of ourselves are a lot higher than other people's expectations.
Hi, Tiffany. I'm Lindsay. After attending one of Mick's sessions, for those of us who are out of work, I'm taking her advice and I'm putting myself out there. I've read your book. I've seen your videos. I love what you have to say. My question to you is, what can I do to differentiate myself from my esteemed colleagues so that I stop being a bridesmaid and I finally become the bride? I get the interviews, I make it down to the last 2, sometimes 3 candidates, and somehow never get the position. What can I do so that I get the position, and what can I do to maintain my self-esteem throughout this process? Thanks.
My heart is with you right now, Lindsay. You can totally do this. There are a few things that I encourage as a part of the process to help just lift you up, but also to help you get the feedback that might be beneficial in you differentiating yourself. Feedback is a gift, and it is one of the most difficult things to get, especially during a hiring process, but doing so and looking at the patterns of the feedback that you receive, I think is going to be so key here. So the secret to getting the feedback that you need to hear, and not just that the feedback that you want to hear, is in helping the other person to feel comfortable, basically creating a context, a circumstance in which someone speaking their truth to you is easy and is an inspiring thing to do. The first step is to communicate to the person how important feedback is to you. So before you even end the interview, you want to say to the person, listen, I am on a journey. Whether or not this opportunity works out, I am so driven to grow and to learn. And I'm hoping that you might be able to share some feedback about this process so far that I can use for the rest of my journey. A couple of years ago, I was in a hiring process, or a couple of years ago, I was on the job and someone gave me feedback that X, Y, or Z. Make up feedback that you've received in the past and then tell them. It was so helpful to me to get this feedback. I was able to really shift how I show up in meetings, how I show up to my colleagues, and it allowed me to be successful for the rest of my trajectory in that role. So if you could be just open and honest with me and share with me your perceptions about how I've done so far, it would mean the world to me. So asking for feedback by giving examples of someone giving you feedback, especially if it was tough feedback in the past, and how you were able to adapt yourself, your behavior, your mindset based on that feedback, inspires other people to feel like, wow, if I invest in this person by giving them feedback, I'm going to get a return on the investment, and maybe someone else will too. In terms of your own energy and keeping your enthusiasm up despite what feels like rejection, I highly recommend affirmation. My mother taught me the power of affirmation, Lindsay. She used to look at me every day when I was growing up, and she would tell me, as if it was the first time that she had ever told me, Tiffany, you're so smart. You're so beautiful. You're so loved. And I now write down any positive feedback that I get. And I always have my affirmation cards at the ready. Anytime I hear that voice in my head saying, Tiffany, are you sure you should be doing this? You know, you're not really qualified to do this. I pull out one of those affirmation cards and remind myself, and I'm going to remind you right now, Lindsay, you are so smart. You are so beautiful. You are so loved. You can do this.
Hi, Tiffany. My name is Carmen Smith with ICF. And I have to admit, I dropped the ball. I don't have your book yet, but I am going to get it. My question to you today is, now that I'm on the other side of my career, how do I balance personal options and personal planning with still being able to do my job and being able to make those contributions within the industry? Thank you.
That is such a great question, Carmen. And first of all, congratulations for being on the other side of your career. My life's work is advancing women and girls. That's pretty much why I'm on the planet. And I share that because life is simpler when you know why you're here. Wherever you are in your career, having clarity about purpose helps you to get really clear about what matters most to you, whether that is creating a sustainable planet, whether you care the most about education, about healthcare, about ensuring that we get from point A to point B safely. And one of the things that's very helpful is having clarity about your purpose so that you can align aspects of your career with what really matters most to you. If you're struggling with figuring out what matters most, one of the exercises I encourage people to do is a funeral visualization exercise. I know it sounds kind of morbid, but it's a very powerful exercise to do, imagining what you would want a family member, a friend, a coworker to say about you at the end of your journey. Imagine that they're eulogizing you. It's very important because at the end of your life, you don't want people standing up and saying, well, you know, she got this promotion and that promotion. You want people likely to stand up and say something about the impact that you created in people's lives and in the world. And so part of the balance of my personal life, my professional life, what is happening to me with my family and friends and community, and what's happening to me with my career is figuring out the forest from the trees, really getting clear about your purpose so that you can align everything up to that. Good luck, Carmen. One of the things that Mick asked me to mention, and that I think is such a compliment given the relaunch of the Win It one-on-one mentoring program in 2022, is my company, The Crew. Our tagline is every woman needs one. And the way that The Crew works is that our algorithm matches you with a small circle of women that become your accountability partners and help you to realize your life goals, whether that life goal is aligning your personal and professional life, whether it's ensuring that other people in your life are clear about which balls you're going to drop, or whether or not your goal is to pursue another opportunity. We are 90% more likely to realize our goals if we have both spoken them out loud, written them down, and told a group of people. And number two, if we regularly check in with those people. I encourage you to check out The Crew. You can do that at thecrew.com. If you're someone who needs some affirmation and some support, please join us. I am so happy to have known Mick, to be working with all of you, and to have had an opportunity to participate in this Win It GBTA convention. I want to give a shout out to Mix partners, Dorothy and Beth, and to thank all of you as you work so diligently to ensure that our country, our world gets back on track and that we can travel safely. Get out there, take those risks, and drop some balls. Bye, everyone.
Please welcome Chief Customer Officer for American Airlines, Allison Taylor.
Oh my goodness, God damn it, I'm so pleased to see you all. What a 2 years we've had. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your confidence in the return to travel. And I'm just so delighted that we can be part of that. And to all of you, I hope that your family and friends have been okay during this very confronting time. But we are back to travel, as you can see, with over 3,000 attendees. And I want to say a very big thank you to Denise, our president of GBTA, and also to Suzanne, our CEO, for making sure that GBTA happened during a very important return to travel year. Thank you so much to both of you. I really mean it. And as we talk about the return to travel, we have in Thanksgiving week, just American Airlines, 5,000 plus flights a day throughout Thanksgiving to 300 destinations and over 45 countries a day. So thank you for helping us make that happen. It's great to have all our planes back in the skies again. And I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. And I know that coming from an Australian might sound very odd, but as I was saying to Rita yesterday, I think Thanksgiving is one of the best holidays you can have. I love everything about it, and I think this one will be extra special. And I really look forward to seeing my son after 2 years in Australia at Christmas as well. But what a time this has been, but thanks for being here. And what we're talking about today is very near and dear to my heart. And I know very much so with Mick Lee and everyone else that will be on stage today. And I'm just a prelude to a very important discussion with Cedric Rockamore, our head of DEI and people at American Airlines, Adrian Porva, and also Ace, who will be up here talking about the DEI. Inclusion, racial equity is important to American Airlines. And like all of you, we're on a journey. We're not perfect, we're not there, but I think that probably applies to most of us in this room. And so what we did 2 years ago is we asked some very powerful, influential, knowledgeable community leaders who are Black to help American Airlines. The Community Council, which Cedric and I look after, is quite an honor. We had another meeting in person just last week. We spent a day and a half talking about what American Airlines needs to do to be better for our Black customers. And we talked about also our Black diversity in procurement and also about getting more Black pilots on board. And it's this team that is helping us. People like Karen, who is a lawyer and is vice chairman of NAACP. And you might have remembered that the NAACP, let's be honest, 3 years ago, actually had a travel advisory against American Airlines for several months. Now Karen is helping us on our journey and is a great partner. I must speak to her about twice a week. Also people like Butch Earl Graves, who is head of Black Enterprise. It was his father actually that was on the American Airlines board for nearly 20 years and was the first Black executive ever on a North American Airlines board. And so we have these great partners helping us. So hopefully you will see us get better and better at this. But also when I was joining American Airlines, I think I may have mentioned this to a few of you in the past, I thought it was really important to not only hear that they wanted to have a great D&I journey for team members and customers, they needed to walk the talk. So I looked at the board, and this is just some of our board. And you can see we really mean it. When we have people like Marty Nesbitt, who is the advisor to Obama when he was president, and is a close friend of his, and many others who are assisting us, we are walking the talk within American. In fact, we have the 3 most senior females in aviation at American Airlines, other than the CEO of Air France, who is also female, which I think is fabulous. We were also voted in 2021 one of the best places to work for diversity, inclusion, and accessibility as well, and also for LGBTQ and equity. And so we're proud of those awards. But I'm going to tell you a story. Anyone who knows me knows I like to tell some stories. And this is Doug Parker, our CEO and chairman of American Airlines. And he was on a Southwest flight in coach. Yes, Southwest. My story is about Southwest. Because you know what? This is not about American Airlines. This is about our industry. Doug was on coach and he was reading White Fragility. And for any of you in the room that have not read White Fragility, it's about how hard it is for actually people who are white to talk about race issues. I read it because my son is black, and I realized so much from just reading that book. So I do invite you all to read White Fragility, but Doug was reading it. And Jackie, who you can see here next to him, who is a black flight attendant for Southwest, came up to him and said, "How are you enjoying the book?" And he said, "Oh, actually I find it really confronting, but I need to know this. And I need to just do better, and I need to learn more." And what she said back to him, he always says this and he starts to choke, so sorry if I choke, but he said, "So do I." She said, "So do I." And she started to cry. And from that, they had a very meaningful discussion about racial equity, about airlines, about travel, about life, about George Floyd murder. And by the end of the flight, they had become really quite good partners in regards to both of them needing to learn and grow together and be better. He actually Doug wrote her a note on the back of a piece of paper he had, gave it to her as he left the plane, because she did not know he was CEO of American Airlines. He was just another customer to her. Her mother, by happenstance, Patty, has worked for American Airlines for 22 years. She placed this on social media, and it had millions and millions of hits and went viral. And from that, they have both had thousands of people contact them to tell them about White Fragility and ask about their journey. And now she actually helps us, as does her mother, Patty. And you see that at her wedding, she invited Doug to be a VIP guest with her, along with Patty as well. So this is about the industry. And if you ask Doug what he learns from this interaction and from his time with Jackie Ray, he will say, "I'm learning every day, and she just helps me be better by being honest about what we have ahead of us." So I really hope that all of you are listening and starting those conversations like Jackie Ray did. Very powerful. Good on her for being so vulnerable. Thank you. Now, of course, we have employee business resource groups that no doubt Cedric will talk about that help us with this as well, because our team members are passionate about this, as they should. We have a very large Pride employee business group as well, and they've won many awards. And I'm just going to tell you a little story about one of my team, Emily, who works with me in the customer organization. I have around 10,000 team members now reporting to me, and I've been amazed how people will share their stories actively because they want us to get better at it. They want travel industry to get better at this. So at American Airlines, we have full equity for if you are LGBTQ and you need anything at all, perhaps you're adopting a baby, perhaps you just want to understand from our resource groups how you can go through the process or medical process if you're transgender. We actually enable that and provide all the information. And Emily here is doing a reveal. She said she was so nervous the first time she contacted our people department, called Accolade, to ask about what she needed to do in order if she was to have a baby, and would she get time off. And she said she was treated like every other employee at that time, never felt different, and got exactly what anyone else would do if they were having a baby, not adopting a baby. And that applies for our gay couples, our lesbian couples as well. And also we held a National Coming Out Day. We had thousands of parents there asking how do they really understand their children when they come to them and say perhaps they're gay or lesbian. And it was just a great learning for all of us, and we continue on this journey. And of course, the more confronting side of travel is any complaints that we receive that are based on racial inequity. They might come from a customer. They might come from a team member about a customer. And so in my group, I also have what we call the SEER program, also developed as a result of the Tamika Mallory incident, where we needed to listen and learn, and we have a very large group that handles them immediately. They're escalated, they're taken extremely seriously, and most importantly, we act upon them and add training when needed, or action if needed. And last but certainly not least, accessibility. We have just changed our AA.com so that if you are blind or visually impaired, you can actually go through and do a tire booking on AA.com, on our app as well with voice recognition. We've done that with all our kiosks as well, and also for wheelchair customers as well. This is so important to us, and there is so much coming in this area as we redo our kiosks as well this year. And some of you have seen this before, I know, but I have to add, it's cool to fly. And this is for our kids with autism, and it gives them a mock-up of how it is on the day to fly. And the pilots come and they do the announcements. They have a bit of noise so they can tell the kids what to be prepared for. They get to check in and they get to experience it without yet flying, and with their parents right there and with other caregivers, so that they're prepared for when they do fly. And I think all of us need a bit of that at the moment, right? As we get used to flying again. And this Cool to Fly has had over 5,000 families make use of it just in the last few years. Hell, this is enough from me. I'm so grateful just to see all of you. Welcome back to travel. And I've got to say, I'm just so delighted to see you all here. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage from Envoy Portfolio, Adrienne Cole-Johnson, engagement expert and consultant, and Ace Callwood, director.
Oh, all right.
Wow. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's
know where you're coming
lunchtime,
from?
which means I don't have to make the joke, we're the only thing standing between you and lunch. You have lunch in front of you. I also don't have to make the joke that you're post-lunch and you're about to slump because you have lunch in front of you. So yeah, we just like the perfect slot to hang out today.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Absolutely.
So I'm Ace Callwood. This is Adrienne Cole-Johnson, my all-time favorite co-host.
Yes.
And today, we get to present Inside Inclusion. So of course, we've been talking DEI, which is more than black people stuff, as I like to say.
Yes.
It goes beyond that. I'm
Yes.
allowed to say that, my mom's black. So yeah, like we get to have a proper conversation about what inclusion looks like inside some massive organizations, and I couldn't be more excited about that.
Absolutely, and as you can see, we're gonna have some fun for the next few minutes that we're together. And just, again, excited to continue the conversation that's already started on the main stage.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to some amazing experts in your field, kind of digging a bit deeper about what they're doing in their respective organizations, and infuse a little bit of other things in between there too.
Absolutely, but you and I do this often,
We
right?
do.
Like we have conversations about diversity, about equity, about inclusion, and we approach it perhaps a little differently. I'd imagine everybody says that. From our perspective, it's not necessarily about anything but humans communicating with humans.
Absolutely.
Right? And like that for me is what global business travel is about. It's putting people in the same room, it's getting them there, the logistics, the behind the scenes, all of the unsung heroes that get folks to be in the room with somebody else and have that face-to-face, interact human to human. And that's really what I want to unpack today.
Absolutely. And I've heard it a lot this morning, but it starts with connection, right?
Yeah.
How do you connect in those one-on-one spaces in your relationships to move the needle along? So connection is like my word, as you know, one of my C's.
One of the C's. Are there more than one C?
There are 3 C's.
There are 3 C's. Talk to me about the 3 C's.
Okay, real quick. So the 3 C's, connection, foundational to all, right?
Okay.
You have to be able to connect and see yourselves and others that you're connecting with. The second is communication. And so not just saying it, but how you say it and when you say it, how you deliver it, right? I'm from the South, so it's a lot of all of that goes into place.
So from the South, what if I said bless your heart?
You know what that
That's
means.
a good, all right, so clearly you're familiar with
Do
the
you
rules
all
and
know what that means?
regulations
Maybe.
of the South.
I see a few
The
hands.
Southerners in the room are like, yep, that doesn't mean anything good, right? And so it's not just what we say, but it's how we say it.
It's how you say it and when you say it and how you deliver it, right?
Okay.
Because how you feel. That's what you're really thinking about. How do you want to feel when you're having the conversation? And last but not least is collaboration. So it's not talking at, but it's talking with to really understand, to come to a place of listening, right? And so always working through things in a collaborative spirit.
So it's connection,
Yes.
communication, collaboration.
You got it.
Those are the 3 C's. We've done this a million times. I finally got the 3 C's
You
down.
finally got it.
So write the 3 C's down. Those I think will be a foundational piece of the conversation we'll have with Cedric from American Airlines. It'll be foundational for the conversation we get to have with Apurva from Marriott International. Like those pieces, as we're building global enterprises, as we're moving our people around the country, around the world, those are the pieces. How do we get them to connect? How do we get them to communicate a little better? And how do we get them to collaborate so we can get like some incredible work done?
That's it.
All right, did you see anything you loved in the lead up to us being able to hang out on stage?
Everything.
Okay.
I was moved by a lot. Kind of speaking about connection, I love the story about, I believe, Jackie and Doug, right? And just how a just very organic connection led to so much learning and even togetherness. And so I know that was a recent story, but that really stood out to me when you think about just like the human spirit, seeing each other beyond titles and things of the sort. So that was one that really stood out, but there were a lot of things. What about you, Ace? Any?
Yeah, there was a piece from Tiffany, and she said we've got to start saying things out loud and creating space for ourselves, right? Like that was the sentiment for me. And as we get into the conversation about how we shift cultures, about how we move inclusion within our organizations, like that's a big thing. I come from the tech world, built tech companies, and we have a saying that if you don't measure it, you can't change it. Right? And so we've got to start putting words to the things that need changing. We've got to start putting metrics to those. And then we can start kind of inching the needle forward incrementally, which is how work gets done.
Absolutely.
Like rapid incrementalization.
Little by little.
I love that. All right. So we've got 2 guests.
We do.
Today. Are you excited for one over the other? That's a trick question. Don't answer that. As your lawyer, I would say don't answer that.
I'm excited about both.
We've been just cutting it up backstage. Like it's been good. So I won, and we've got like a couple minutes where we're supposed to do an intro, but I think maximizing time makes more sense. So I don't know if he's ready, but I'm going to invite him out. We've got the Vice President of Global People Operations and Diversity and Inclusion at American Airlines. Would love to have Cedric Rockamore come join us on the stage for Inside Inclusion. All right, I'm gonna pass out a handshake. Welcome, come on out. How you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you again. It's been so long.
Again, yeah, it's been all of 5 minutes by the clock down here.
Seats are low.
Right? They're good. They're good. So Cedric, We've been hanging out for like a half an hour. We had a fair amount of prep leading up to this, but it's almost like the last 30 minutes of conversation are the fun bits, like how we ended up here on this stage talking about inclusion. And I'll start with You're a D&I guy now, but you come from the ops world. You know how the people on the ground are getting work done. So you were at BWI back in the day. I think you were at Reagan for a bit, Philly, Dallas. You've kind of been all over the place, and you've seen boots on the ground. So talk me through how you ended up in this position.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started out my airline career at airports, and that is what really compelled me to get in the industry. So I'm not the guy who's an aviation guy. Like people say, well, what's your favorite aircraft, right? It's the one that gets me there safely.
How about that?
So I'm not that, but what I am is the people part of it. If you're in an airport and you're walking through in some of our larger airports, you can have on any given day 80,000 people transiting, and so I'm an energy person. And so after spending about 20 years, as you mentioned, I've had the privilege of leading some of these larger operations. This opportunity to come into the HR function, and a part of that is also having the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece, was just a natural flow for me. Initially, when I thought about it, I thought about me and HR, I don't know, an operations guy. But at the end of the day, it really is about, and I think we've talked about this, it's connecting people.
Yes.
And so anything that's involving people and just that energy, that is gonna always be something that I'm gonna be attracted to.
Absolutely.
Right, so we've got the people and the energy guy here on stage. I love that. So as you kind of think about the role within American Airlines, how long has that been around? And then what's the purview? Like, what's the scope of your role?
Okay, so I have your traditional HR piece, which is, all the things, the investigations, the HR stuff. And then there's this diversity, equity, inclusion piece. And when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, you mentioned a little bit of it, Ace, earlier. When we say diversity, we mean representation. And we talk about representation, and that means representation of all of us. It is not about a single demographic, so it is not about, as people generally think about black people or maybe women. No, this is about all of us, white men, black women, you name it. This is about the representation of all of us. And I think it's critically important that we recognize it's about all of us. Otherwise, you'll have a thing where it's diversity is over there and I'm over here. Yeah. And in order for us to create this inclusive environment, we need to include every single person, right? Yeah. And so that is our focus. And the same with equity, we see as just fairness. Because sometimes people see diversity, equity, and inclusion. These words get lost in the mix.
Yes.
But equity, just talked about diversity as representation. Equity is about fairness. We can wrap our brain around fairness. It's about fairness of opportunities, of resources, just fairness. And then that last piece is inclusion. That is about belonging, this sense of, do I belong here? Do our customers, do they feel that they belong on our aircraft? Do our team members feel that they belong on the team? And so our work is really centered around this thing around representation, this thing around fairness, this thing around belonging.
Yeah, I love it. And
Adrian, I want to jump into
I do. You see that? Can I jump in?
Please.
Okay. You see that, right?
You're like,
I like that.
I love that you all took the time to really define what the words mean. I think because you hear DEI so often, sometimes we glaze over it. We assume that we know and we assume that we're on the same page. So I love that. But one thing that we chatted about earlier, I love to bring here is when it is about all, how do you decide where to start, right? And I know you talked a bit about some of the metrics you all looked at, and just if you can share a little bit about how you even decide where to start and how you even guide that with strategy within the organization.
Right, thank you. So first, when we talk about this work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, I was in a panel of maybe a month or so ago, and the subject was progress, not perfection. And so I think we should always first think about inclusive and representation and this fairness thing is making progress and not getting ourselves bogged around this thing around perfection. And so what we, obviously, much like the folks in this room, we're a very data-driven organization, right? And so when we look at the data, you talked about what get measured to get done. When we looked at the data, it was glaringly clear to us that the demographic that was most disproportionately impacted were our Black team members. So this was not some arbitrary deal. This was not even something that came on the heels of George Floyd, while that intensified everything. This was about looking at data and saying, where are our gaps? And that's where we saw the largest gaps. And they were just not close gaps. They were very, very large gaps. And so we took our attention and said, we're going to focus on closing these representation gaps within our Black team members.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
So progress, not perfection. Like that as an idea, I think, can drive so much change. Yeah. Right? Like there's, it feels to me, as we have the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, there's so much we're not willing to say. There's so much that's off limits or is taboo or, hey, I might say that wrong. But if we reframe the, hey, we're here to make progress, that means we're gonna misstep, we're gonna miss the mark. And if we do that, and if we've created a culture where we can, then perhaps we can make some progress and we can start moving forward. Like, absolutely. How do you shift culture there from, I say the wrong thing, it's an HR issue, to, hey, if it's coming from a good place and recognizing that impact over intent is really important. Like, how do we shift the culture to create space to have hard conversations and maybe miss the mark?
Yeah, so our strategy really is based on three basic pillars, excuse me. So 3 pillars. The first pillar is this thing around listening and relationships. And Allison was just out and she talked a little bit about some of the relationships that we built over our journey. And the part around listening. Yes. And so in order for you to listen, you have to create a safe space. Yeah. I mean, there is no way that we will get to the kind of progress that I think all of us desire without people feeling that they are able to say what's on their mind. And then if it's and then we have to accept that in the spirit of which it was given, right? If it's I'm just trying to understand it, I'm just trying to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from. I'll give you an example. For me, I'm a 60s baby, right? So a lot of the things that are now things that we've progressed to are new to me. And so, for instance, the transgender piece, we have a transgender leader that I spent some time with. And the first thing I said to her was, listen, I just need freedom to be able to speak. And then you can tell me, hey, Cedric, that's offensive. Yeah. Because the spirit of it is for me to learn. And I can't do that if I'm afraid that I'm going to say something that, while it was an intention, it was not received well. And then I can now know, as I go out to a broader audience, not to do that. And so she was gracious enough to allow me that free space for me to learn.
Yeah, it's a lot of grace that comes into these conversations, right? Just owning the fact that I don't know what I don't know, but I want to learn and listen, as you shared. You talked about safe spaces, and it's so interesting when I think about the role of engagement. We talk about safety as a foundation, right? And then we go into, well, what does it look like to have a brave and bold space, right? And so that's when you bring in the belonging and some of the other things that you mentioned in your pillar, because not only are we creating that space, you're also looking at, okay, are people comfortable saying what's on their mind? Are they able to make a mistake in a conversation? And so I just think that's kind of key, critical too, that safe, and then brave and bold spaces too, so that people are empowered to share and just to be, really.
Yeah, I think it was, and Allison talked about our CEO, Doug Parker, and his own personal journey. And I remember when we did go through this NAACP travel ban that Allison mentioned. At that time I was out in the operation, and so I was, quite frankly, I had family members calling me up, and you know how your family probably a lot more transparent than others, and they would you know, I don't know if it was joking or whatever. Hey man, what's up with your racist company? And you know, you're like, oh Lord.
Right.
And so we were really like out, and my thinking was, hey, we got to go out and we got to show that we are not what we're being portrayed to be. And Doug, to his credit, spent some time with the board and came back and said, this is an opportunity. Yeah. And he said, listen, no one has this right. No one's getting it right. So here's an opportunity for us to potentially learn, step up into this space around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and be a leader in it. Yeah. But it is not for us to go and challenge, because clearly there are perceptions and we have to deal with those perceptions. But his thought, and that's how we really got started down this path of really solidifying our strategy around DEI. Then of course, George Floyd kicked it into overdrive. But our CEO, it started from the top.
Yeah. So the brave and bold spaces that Adrienne mentioned, it seems like you all leaned into that as an organization. It's, look, we can be a leader in the industry. We got dinged, we got a slap on the wrist, a heavy one from the NAACP, and we can turn that around. So when you talk about opportunity, talk me through where you see the next opportunities for American Airlines, for the industry, and you know, you mentioned a transgender colleague. Like, this is beyond race.
Right.
It's beyond
absolutely.
gender. We've got ability. We've got just cultural backgrounds. Like, so many aspects of diversity. Where do you see opportunities in training, in L&D, in HR? I know you've got your bias training that you all do. Is that unpacking bias? Am I making that up?
Yeah.
There's a bias training.
There is. There
right?
is. And so I'll just start by going back to my initial point of just remembering that it is progress, right? It is not perfection. And so we start again with our strategy. These listening sessions, incredibly powerful, because as you're listening, if folks are in a safe space, what you'll realize is that not only will folks share, and if to the extent that they're comfortable, if you walk out of a listening session and these are your first attempts to really unmask and get into how do you create a more inclusive culture, if you don't walk out of those meetings having had some awkward or uncomfortable pieces in there or periods in there, then you have not pushed hard enough. So this thing around listening is powerful, because also what's nestled in that those listening sessions are people will also tell you the solutions. Yes. They will tell you, here's what this looks like if it was done right or correct. And so these listening sessions are very important. These relationships, we talked about our relationships. We have a relationship with the Human Rights Campaign, NAACP. We have relationships with the National Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. All of these relationships, veteran relationships. So that first pillar around listening and relationships. This second piece around, and you talked about it, learning, this journey of identifying bias. We all have bias. How does it show up in the workplace? And then how do you mitigate it? We're doing work around that. And this thing we call aligned values, but really it's a part of this second pillar that's really advocacy, right? How do you stand for what you feel are things that align with your values as a company? You have to speak on certain things. And certain things, maybe if you can't have an impact on it, you don't. But our organization spoke on making it easier to vote, not harder. We did not align with a political party. We did that because that's something that was important to our team members. And this is something that we spoke on because we felt that we could have an impact. We don't speak on everything, but some things we thought we could have an impact. The Crown Act, which was simply in 2021, you would be amazed to think that people are being discriminated against based on the texture and the style of their hair. And so as a company, we spoke out for legislation around the Crown Act. And so we want to advocate. And we know that there are a lot of times you can get a little heat when you decide to go out there, even internal from our team members. But we have to explain. We're not associated with a political party. We don't care who you vote for. We just think it should be easy to vote, right? And so those are the two pillars around that second pillar. And then the last one, which I think is one that I'm incredibly excited about, is this thing around representation. And this is what I talked about earlier about representation, and we wanted to be intentional around our representation. And when I say intentional, we're not talking about quotas, because when you get into that, that's a different thing. We are not interested in quotas, we're interested in representation. We're interested in having an organic representation. We're interested to know that this is about a business imperative. I always talk about we're very strong in South and Central America. If we had decision makers within our organization, but no one spoke Spanish, would that make any sense? It would not, because that would not be smart business. So when we think about representation, we want to be intentional. Intentional is having diverse slates, having diverse panels, having diverse programs that'll help develop so that the pool is larger, and so that leaders now, when they go to look to fill a position, that they're not having to say, I'm going to purposely select a female or a, you name the demographic, but because we've had this built into our system, we know diverse panels, diverse slate, ultimately you'll have a diverse outcome.
Absolutely.
I love that. That brings us right to time, and I think landing that on representation not only tees us up for the next conversation, but gives us an opportunity to say thank you for representing American Airlines. Cedric Rockamore, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Wow. Such great dialogue. I know, it just goes so fast.
Like 15 minutes is not enough. I want more.
Yeah, I'm really, what I'm encouraged about that story is that opportunity. Because I think I saw earlier they have someone from the NAACP who's now on their council, right?
Exactly.
And so again, having the conversation, I always say necessary.
Yep.
Might seem hard, but more necessary. Having the conversation and doing the work. So just really inspired.
I want to kind of contextualize that thing you just said, though, right? Like we talk, Adrian and I talk a lot about navigating difficult dialogues to help executive teams, executive leadership teams work through tough conversations, but you have reframed that for me, and I'd like you to do that for the folks here and the folks at home, perhaps.
Yeah,
like, why have we reframed that?
Yeah, I think often we focus on it being tough, or we focus on it being difficult. And sometimes, for some of us, if it's tough or difficult, we will avoid it and we won't have the conversation. And so I focus on necessary, right? And so I think when you think of necessary, you're able to kind of walk through that uncomfortableness that we just talked about a little bit earlier to get there. I do it at home with my 9-year-old sometimes, right? I do it with my husband sometimes. But again, you want to make sure that you talk about what needs to be talked about and you say what needs to be said. And so I always, whenever I hear difficult, I say, but it's necessary so we can get it done.
It's necessary and valuable, and like we just heard from Cedric, creates an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? To hand a gift to someone.
To grow.
That tough feedback, or the hard thing you got to say, or the stepping in and saying, hey, there was a microaggression there. I didn't love that happened. Here's why, here's how we fix it. I think we just heard, like if we invite the right folks to the table and we have proper representation, we have opportunities to have those necessary conversations with the people who can actually affect change and help us shift that.
To learn.
All right. So that brings us to our next guest. Very excited for this one as well. And, you know, backstage, it was almost like Cedric and our next guest had known each other for a while. They were sharing war stories, talking about the things they've seen and the roles that they fill in their organization. So next up to the stage, we have Apoorva Gandhi. Apoorva is the Senior Vice President for Multicultural Affairs, Social Impact, and Business Councils at Marriott International. Give Apoorva a round of applause. There he is.
Oh, ooh, just standing up, right?
There we go. I love it. I feel taller on this stage.
You are tall.
I love it. Welcome. Welcome.
Good to see you again.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Oh. All right. So I was told when we were conceptualizing this View-esque show that I could be Whoopi Goldberg, which means the two of you have to pick your characters, choose your fighters.
Oprah, of course.
Right.
I'm Oprah, of course.
All right. And Apoorva is the... Where am I going to go with this?
I don't know, Don Lemon. I can, you know.
All right, you chose Don Lemon. There we go.
Don Lemon.
Didn't see that coming.
Okay.
But I like it.
All right.
I like it. So Apoorva,
Yes.
you were right up the road from us. We're based in Richmond, Virginia. You're up in Bethesda.
Yeah, not too far away.
From your perch at Marriott International, talk to me about the role and kind of the scope. Like, you've got hundreds, thousands of folks around the globe that are kind of under your purview.
Yeah,
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to GBTA for inviting me to come here. It's so good to see everybody in person. It's good to see, be in the same room, and I hope that this is really going to bring back meetings and travel and be the first start of that. So we're really excited to be
I've
together.
shaken so many hands today. It's
I know.
Like, we're back.
I know. I in terms of my role, I'm so lucky. I feel I have the honor and privilege of being able to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. It's part of Marriott's culture, and I get to talk about how we work really hard every day of the week to welcome all, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your abilities are, or who you love. What a lucky guy I am.
Yes, indeed.
Amen.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Amen.
It's all about warm. We often talk about just warm and welcoming spaces and engagement, right?
Right.
How are we creating those environments to make sure that folks are feeling that? There were some really big things that you all are doing at Marriott. Some great opportunities, some ways that you all are really even engaging as teams. Share one that you're really excited about with folks who are in the room.
Well, I tell you, there's so many things, and you're absolutely right. What we strive to do every day of the week is make sure when people come into our hotels, they feel like they belong.
Yes.
That they belong from the minute they walk in and every step along the way, because we know that that's so important. People have weddings at our hotels. They have big business meetings like this, right? They bring their corporate customers in, and we want to make sure everyone has a stay that makes them feel good and exceeds their expectations. One of the ways we talk about that is with our Love Travels campaign. If you've seen that, I just love it. It's just a beautiful, inclusive campaign that just talks about people traveling to where they love, being with who they love, doing things they love.
Right.
Who doesn't love love?
Right.
I mean, it's so elementary, and I think it just showcases our commitment to peace, inclusivity, equity, human rights. It's just a really nice rallying cry for us that really talks about the company and the culture that we've had for 90 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, as I think about travel buyers, folks sending their people out into the world to do whatever mission they've got in front of them, you've got, 7,500 properties?
7,500 plus, we're growing every day.
I mean, that is incredible. Yeah. How do you manage the inclusion, right? Like that, as soon as I walk onto a Marriott property, I feel like I belong. How do you navigate the cultural implications, shift in regional dynamics? Like, what does that look like to standardize that experience across the world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, success is never final, as Mr. Marriott always says. We're really proud of the work that we've done so far, but we recognize there's always more to do. But fundamentally, it comes back to our culture. You ask almost any Marriott employee, they will tell you our culture is always putting people first, right? And that means all people. That means all people, and that we take care of our associates, so they'll take great care of the guests, and the guests will keep coming back. And when you focus on having your associates just be enthused with welcoming all, but also doing it with cultural competency. We call it understanding the differences that make a difference, right? So it makes sure that you understand. If you have a traveler sometimes from Asia, they present their business cards a little bit differently than we may here, right? Now, does it cost you any money to learn that? No. But does it make a big difference to somebody? If they feel that they're being treated with that respect, you bet it does. And there's so many other ways that we can, by different cultures, we have lots of tools, trainings, but more importantly, it's about welcoming all and trying to take those extra steps to listen, learn, and execute.
So there's a quote that I want to jump into, and Adrian, I know you've got a question just percolating there. We're not doing something crazy or wild, it's just in support of the culture. That is your quote, and it sounds like the work that you do is table stakes, right? Like, how do we standardize experience? But that's requisite to make sure global business travelers have a great experience, irrespective of where they're coming from or where they're going to. Infusing that seems like a lift across, let me make sure I've got the number right. You were telling me how many folks are under your purview, 500 to 600,000 employees.
Who wear our name badge, you bet. And it matters to us greatly. And you're right, we want to make sure, look, to me, it should be standard. People want to feel welcome.
Yes.
They pay good money to come stay with us.
Right.
That's they must receive that, and we want to deliver it. But the trick is, how do we also make people feel unique and respond to their uniqueness, right? Now, there's some cases where, you know what, some people just want to be treated the same way as anybody else, right? But then there are some other people who say, hey, look, you know, I like that you recognize this about me. And that you maybe mentioned something to me to wish me a happy this, or we're so happy to have you during this important holiday. Some people like that. So we have our folks make sure to understand the right cues, understand what are the right tools, understand what the right words are.
Yes.
Words matter, images matter, people matter, tone matters, it all matters. Yeah.
Kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the how you say it, when you say it, and all of the other things too. I'm still stuck on what you said about know the differences that make a difference. I kind of feel that, right? Because it's really important to make sure that you're centering that person's lived experience, their perspective when it comes to that work. What I love that you all are doing is you're really looking internal and external, right?
That's right.
So you've kind of gone in and out even in this conversation about the work that you're doing with your staff and your team. But then also it's that external, like how a customer feels when they walk into your hotel. Tell me, is that are you doing that at the same time? Are the pillars the same? Are the principles the same? How does that work for you?
Yeah,
all?
that's a great question. I would tell you, yes, we are doing them always.
Yes.
Right, and the pillars are similar, right? Because if you are a guest coming to one of our hotels, or if you're an associate who works in our hotels or on property, you still want to feel welcome, right? You still want to feel that you belong. We don't want people worrying, like we're back in high school. Do I fit in? Do I belong here? Come on. We're all professionals now, and we want people to not waste any brain space. So the answer is yes. We spend a lot of time. I'll give you an example. We have a campaign called Respect for All. Okay. And what that is it's talking about and showing situations that happen in hotels or in the workplace. And what is unconscious bias all about? Cedric, I was taking notes from what Cedric was saying. That was some good stuff there. But talking about, we all have unconscious bias. Doesn't make you a bad person, it just makes you human, right? But understanding it, understanding what does it look like? How can it manifest itself in microaggressions, word choice, missed opportunities to build belonging and relationships. So we do that with our associates a lot. And then by extension, those same tools can then be applied as they interact with our guests. And it all kind of fits together beautifully.
So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about the flip side of making everybody feel included, right? We're in this hyper politicized environment right now. And one of the things you and I talked about in prep is like, you've got some groups that come stay at your properties who might be diametrically opposed to another group staying at a property, right? Like you've got folks that are just boycotting because so-and-so is here, so-and-so's at a Marriott. How do you reconcile that? Like, what does that look like for you?
Sure, that's a great question and a very timely one, I will say.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, right now, look, everyone's antenna is up.
Sure.
But what I speak a lot to groups like this, and essentially I speak a lot at universities. So you get a lot of young folks who are lovingly idealistic, if you know what I mean. But I always
they're Coke drinkers and they don't want the Pepsi crew at the Marriott.
There you go, right, there you go.
And I can identify with that. If you're Pepsi folks out there, let's talk afterwards. Conversation about that. But
what we say is, inclusion means welcoming people you agree with. Inclusion also means welcoming people you disagree with. Now, look, if there's something illegal going on or unsafe, I mean, that's different, right? We owe it to our associates and our guests to keep people safe. But you can't, legislate, or you can't decide who's going to stay in your hotel based on their beliefs. And what are you going to do? Their agenda's going to come to a Porva Gandhi's desk, and then I'm going to review, okay, well, I like that, I don't like that,
Right.
And in some places, that is considered discrimination, right? So there are times where, yes, we recognize that there's a group that, we don't necessarily agree, but we don't want to discriminate with people like that. And so we have to include everyone. And sometimes it's a little tough, but the opposite of that would be to say, okay, we're only going to do business with these kind of clients. Now, back in the 60s, people used to say that, but it was in a different direction. if you know what I mean.
Correct.
Sure.
Right? So it's hard.
Correct.
Yeah, I would imagine quite a number of organizations are grappling with that right now, right? Who do we do business with, along what political lines, along what moral lines, so on and so forth. It's really hard, particularly with a massive organization. Like you've got representation, as Cedric talked about. He drilled that word in across the organization, along a bunch of different spectrums.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I was hearing Cedric talk before about, you know, what do we stand up for? We stand up for things that matter to our associates and our guests. Voting rights. You bet we care about voting rights.
Yes.
Sure.
You bet we are against things like the Asian hate issues that have
against the API community.
Right, against the API. I mean, that's personal to me, right? I mean, that's something that matters to me very much. You know, after George Floyd's murder, I mean, we've been at this for a long time, and we recognize this has been going on for generations. But we spoke out because this was important to us, regardless of political affiliations and things like that.
Yeah. I often think about as we're moving through, and I love the simplicity of the campaigns that you all have too, because it just kind of speaks to you. But we often talk about making sure those who are most proximate to the issue or the concern, making sure that their voice is there and that they have value. And it seems as if you all do a lot of just stakeholder engagement across the line. What does that look like for you all?
Yeah, internally and externally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we are blessed at Marriott to be across the globe, right? We have folks from all walks of life, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Why wouldn't you want to bring those diverse and amazing and innovative opinions to the table? Let me give you an example. You know, we do a lot of work with the disability community, right? And we say, hey, look, you know, we want to understand, tell us about the travel experience. From trip search online to check-in to check-out, everywhere along. You know, we want to get that right. It's important to us for all the right reasons. So we engaged many associates with disabilities and said, give us your feedback. Tell us what you see. Tell us what we can do better. What are we doing well? We also engaged with some of our external diversity and inclusion partners, like Disability In is one, for example.
Is there anything that you heard that you really liked, that you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely. You know, so much it was about cultural competence.
Okay.
Here's an example. You know, my best friend is deaf. My best friend is deaf. It drives him nuts when he goes to the front desk with an interpreter and the front desk associate talks to the interpreter. He's like, why are they looking at that person? I'm the one paying here.
Yes.
I'm the one.
Right.
And that was like, never thought of it.
Yeah.
And now we think of it.
Yeah.
And now it's in training. And now we're changing it. Right? But we would have never gotten that without this diversity of opinion and thought. Yeah, you got to have those conversations. And there's a way to do it, like Cedric was talking about, in a safe way, a careful way, and a way with good motive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good motive is a piece that I want to dig into, right? We talk impact over intent.
Yeah.
Right? We say that a lot, right? But we also say in the DEI world, assume positive intent. And at some point, it doesn't matter what the intent was if we've missed the mark. Right. It doesn't matter that I thought I was supposed to do X if I should have done Y, and not doing Y made me feel excluded. Right. And so balancing that has to be tough, right? Like culturally, across an organization.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, the thing I've noticed is for all of us in the hospitality industry, most folks are with it. I mean, you can't be in hospitality and not be about welcoming all, right? Once people work in a hotel, look, I started off my career as a front desk associate at the Greenbelt, Maryland Marriott when I was in college. It got in my blood. Right. I loved it. It was fun. And once you get that taste of working in this industry, people stick with it, and typically people are pretty good-natured and want to welcome all.
Oh, I love that. So that brings us to time. Again, like 15 minutes just flew by. Apurva is not hard to find. You're around for a little bit.
I'm around, absolutely.
If anybody wants to chat. But a round of applause for Apurva Gandhi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome.
Great,
Awesome.
great content. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All righty.
And that is Inside Inclusion. I just wanted to say that.
That, folks, is Inside Inclusion. You got to put your best radio voice on, your smooth jazz voice.
So many nuggets and so many things to unpack and learn, you know, from leaders. And I think what's really standing out to me is that there's no one size fits all.
Okay.
And it's a long game. I keep hearing the word journey, which makes sense because we're at a travel conference, right?
I don't know if you've heard, it's not a sprint, It's a marathon. I don't know if you've heard that before, especially as we're in unprecedented times.
Yes.
But newsflash, unprecedented times. And yeah, it's the long work, as we call it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Those are big pieces, that rapid incrementalism that we've talked about, right? Making the small steps quickly and perhaps creating. So I want to talk about safe space real quick. We use that term a lot. Safe space, I don't know, I roll my eyes at that a little bit, right? That feels tough as we're in this environment where everybody can be offended about everything. How do you properly create a safe space? What does that look like?
You would ask me that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough, but what I always say to folks is you have to start with just being who you are.
Okay.
It goes back to being. It goes back to relationship, right? And so before you go down the path of trying to be a certain way, show up as you are, hopefully in relationship, and be willing to receive what you need to receive, listen and learn a bit, and then you move forward from there. Another thing that really came out in the dialogue was you heard a lot about relationships. And a lot of impact was made through relationships that were in place, whether they were business relationships or personal relationships. And so I think it's important that we really center that relationship bit, even as you're having to create safe and brave and bold spaces too.
Yeah, and that leads into mitigating unconscious bias. Unconscious bias came up in the Cedric convo. It came up in the Apoorva convo. For those of you who are hanging out, this is, I think, where I plug our 8 a.m. session on Friday. Adrian and I get to deep dive on the rest of everything we didn't touch on in what felt like a short half an hour with 2 guests, right?
Yes.
So we will be going deep on Friday
indeed.
into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some of the corners that we didn't properly get to explore today. One of those being mitigating unconscious bias.
Absolutely.
Right? The best way to do that is to form a one-on-one relationship with someone from a group that you don't necessarily normally typically interact with.
Absolutely.
That's actually the path to it.
Yeah, and Friday will be exciting because some of what we're talking about we'll be able to do in a smaller group, right?
Sure. Yep.
Hearing from you all, what's on your mind, right? And then hopeful to move the conversation along into some action and impact. So if you all see Ace this week, 8 a.m. is early for him. So if you have his number, just shoot him a text. If you see him Thursday night, say something to him. 8 a.m. is a little early, but
I put you on the spot, so you returned in the States. I like
absolutely.
That. Well played, well played. So representation is an important piece. We talked about those relationships. As I'm pulling some of the threads of today's convos, and well before we got on stage, right? As we've teed up today, representation, having the right folks at the table, having folks who would have different experiences. And again, I will continue to talk about how that is beyond just race and gender, right? We talk about that in the DEI space, but ability is a big one. Cultural differences, if you're living abroad, away from where you were born, or vice versa, all of those pieces go into who we should have around, helping inform how we can do our work a little better.
Absolutely. The data shows, it tells a story. And that's what I really loved about American. They really went to their impact. They went to their data to let that guide what their first step was going to be. And so I think I can feel really touchy and mushy a lot of times, but there's value in the story. There's value in the numbers, and it tells a story. So I always say, go back to that, and then let that be a bit of the roadmap.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I kind of want to tee up our Friday convo for those who will be joining us. Just with some baseline definitions, maybe some things to walk away with. We defining diversity, defining equity, defining inclusion. We've got a bunch of definitions across the spectrum. The inclusion definition I really like, a sense of purpose and belonging for all, right? We talk about terms of belonging a lot, but we miss the purpose piece, right? If I don't have purpose in an organization, but you've invited me in because of my addition to the diversity, right, then it becomes tokenism. And it's really important to acknowledge that A, an individual can't be diverse, right? That's an important piece. And B, we've got to have purpose and belonging, because one without the other is tokenism or is really unfulfilling for an individual.
Absolutely.
And those pieces, I think we lose the nuance of. We talk about belonging, that's great. It is, but like going a step, a layer deeper, put some context, some meat to what that actually means and how we affect it within our organizations.
I always say voice and value.
Voice and value.
Yes,
talk to me about that.
Voice is, you may have someone, as we often say, a seat at the table, having someone in the room, but how are we giving value to that voice, right? How are we really centering that perspective a bit more? So the two, for me, have to go hand in hand. So it's voice and value.
Okay.
Yeah. But we can talk about that Friday morning at 8 a.m.
At 8 a.m.
in our workshop.
Right, early.
Awesome.
I'll see you there. Yeah. I operate on ACE standard time, so
standard time.
We'll start the workshop between 8 a.m. and 10:30.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. That's when we're starting. We're starting it. I'm not going to get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
8 a.m. We'll be there Friday morning. Second definition: diversity. Right? Like all of the ways we're both similar and different. We focus on differences, but similarities. Like if we end up with a homogenous group of folks in a place, we are missing the proper opportunity and value.
Yes.
And then equity. Everybody has the support they need to be successful. So some really simple definitions that tee us up. Again, 8 a.m. Friday. We'll see you there. But no, I mean, any last nugget from Cedric, Apurva, anything you heard today, like land this plane for us.
Wow. I think what's resonating with me is just getting started. And I know no one said that today, but that's what is standing with me. You know, sometimes when it's a big thing and it's so much to do, sometimes it's easier to not do it. But I think getting it started and getting the work started. So I'm just grateful that GBTA has centered this conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, here on the main stage and the ability to hear from so many other experts in the field.
Well, with that, from the main stage, Adrienne Cole-Johnson, everyone, that brings us to time. Thank you for having us.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Let's go. Let's go. Get your pad.
Please welcome to the stage Chief Executive Officer of GBTA, Suzanne Neufong.
I'm realizing that in a cold room, this keeps you warm. So it's a new winter policy, I think, for anybody who lives north of here, that you need to wear this all winter. I have a lot of takeaways from that. Impact over intent, progress, not perfection. Cedric's idea of I'm in the energy business. I have to use that tomorrow in the sustainability panel because we are all in the energy business when you're at a convention. Keep the energy high. And certainly Adrienne and Ace, the connection leading to collaboration. Apurva, success is never final. That's every event, of course, and know the differences that make a difference. I think I've got notes I'm taking home. So certainly thank you, Adrienne, Ace, Cedric, and Apurva. That was really terrific. I think the insights that we take with us are ones that we take home not just to our workplace, but also to our families and our friends. And I'd love to give a big thank you to Mick, to everything that when it sponsors, American Airlines and Airbnb also provided with us today for this great diversity, equity, and inclusion session. So this day so far has been all about insights. So you have all of these insights to go home with, whether you made it to education sessions, which gave you more data to take home, or whether you have to do those and look them up on the hub. Today was really about setting the stage. Now, the morning at least. Now the rest of the day is all about connection because Expo is back. So I know a lot of people have gone on to their booths to make sure that they're ready, but it's really, really, really cool to be back after almost 2.5 years to the GBTA trade show, which we call Expo. So what's really different today is that because we didn't have an opening night reception last night, we have an opening reception tonight, and that will be on the trade show floor. So it will be an extension beyond that. The trade show floor ends at 6, but this great Allied Leadership Council idea to have an opening reception happens from 6 to 7:30, and that is for all attendees, which is really terrific, and we're really thrilled, of course, that we have great sponsors that put that on as well. So for us, we couldn't do it without you, and you came forward and made sure that this was an all-inclusive. Here are those brands. Please stop by. There are some fun and games. There'll be music, there'll be food, there'll be, of course, drinks. So there'll be some cool scavenger hunt stuff that you'll be working on while you're working with these great brands to thank them for that evening. I also want to extend our apologies, of course, for anybody who was delayed in getting your badge and your little dot today. Certainly in the age of COVID, we expect the unexpected, and a lot of people showed up at the same time, and we had some long waits. So if you were one of those, we really want to apologize to you. Personally, I hear that a lot of you found old friends in line, that you made use of your time to download the Clear app or do something else that was useful, and that you caught up with old friends while you were, or met a new friend while you were in line as well. But from my staff, thank you for your patience with us. Tomorrow, we just have to hand out a lot of dots, so that will go much faster. Certainly, we couldn't do it without all of you and your participation. A lot of ed sessions were full. We'll be adding some chairs to those tables as well, which is, I think, proving that education and being back face-to-face and learning best practices is really, really why we're all here. Tomorrow morning, so remember to fill out your daily health questionnaire via Clear or that QR code if you are not participating in Clear or cannot. Get your daily registration sticker or your health pass little dot. I don't know what dot color is today, but today is yellow, tomorrow's a different color. And get ready now for what you've been missing at, of course, the GBTA Expo. So have a great afternoon, everyone, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Thank you.